Now come along with me in the footsteps of Jesus, and I'll show you why they did it. And then one day came the voice of a man crying in the wilderness, "Repent, repent, repent."
Welcome to CountryMusiX. Johnny Cash's big brother, Jack, died in an accident on May 12, 1944. He was working at a sawmill when a saw blade kicked back and hurt him badly. This event changed Johnny's life a lot. Jack wasn't just his brother. He was also someone Johnny looked up to and learned from. Losing him was hard for Johnny. It affected the way he saw the world and even the music he made. Johnny often wrote songs about sadness, hope, and how life can be tough. His brother's death was always on his mind, and it inspired him to create music that touched many people's hearts. Johnny Cash's brother, Jack, played a big role in shaping his life and career. If Jack hadn't died tragically, Johnny might not have become the famous singer we know today. Losing Jack made Johnny want to help people who were struggling. It also made him hold on to his faith even tighter during tough times, like when the United States faced challenges in the 60s and 70s. Through all the ups and downs of his own life, Johnny Cash's faith and his desire to help others stayed strong thanks to the impact of his brother's death. Johnny Cash grew up in a simple home, but he became a huge music star, known all over. He believed he was living not just his own purpose, but also his brother Jack's purpose. Jack couldn't fulfill his dreams because he died young, so Johnny felt like he was living for both of them. This belief gave Johnny a strong sense of duty to make a positive impact through his music, reaching far beyond just country music fans. This is the tragic story of the passing of Johnny Cash's brother Jack. Johnny Cash was born in Kingsland, Arkansas on February 26, 1932. When he was just 3 years old, his family moved to Dyess, Arkansas, a place started by the government during the hard times of the Great Depression. They gave families land to work on, hoping they could own it someday. Cash's family grew cotton, and Johnny started helping out in the fields when he was only 5 years old. Johnny Cash's love for music began in the cotton fields where he worked with his family in Dyess, Arkansas. They sang while they worked, and those melodies sparked something special in Johnny. He was the middle child, with 3 older and 3 younger siblings. His big brother Jack was someone Johnny admired a lot. Jack, just 2 years older, was like a hero to Johnny, and he thought the world of him. Their bond influenced Johnny deeply and inspired many of his songs later in life. Johnny Cash's brother Jack was the favorite son in their family, especially to Johnny and their father Ray. Johnny remembered Jack as strong and muscular, even at just 14 years old. He worked hard and was in great shape. Jack was also dedicated to becoming a minister in their religion. Johnny said, "Being called to preach in our religion means that you have dedicated yourself to be a minister." Every night, Jack sat at the table reading the Bible from his library. He had a big impact on Johnny and influenced him a lot. When Johnny Cash was 12, a terrible tragedy happened to his brother Jack. It was during the Great Depression, and everyone, including kids, had to work. Jack got a job at the school's agriculture shop, using a big saw to split logs into fence posts. One Saturday, Johnny wanted Jack to go fishing, but Jack said he had to work at the sawmill. Johnny Cash remembered a strange feeling on the day of the tragedy. He, Jack, and their mother all had a weird sense that something bad might happen to Jack. That's why Johnny wanted Jack to go fishing instead of working. Cash said their mother even came out of their house in Dyess, which she hardly ever did, to see them off that morning. Johnny brought 2 fishing poles, hoping Jack would change his mind and come with them. At a fork in the road, Jack went towards the school, and Johnny went to the river. Johnny said it was a bad day for fishing. He lay by the river for about 2 hours before deciding to head home. On his way, his father arrived in the preacher's car, telling Johnny to leave the fishing pole and get in. Johnny knew right away something awful had happened. Cash's father broke the news that Jack had been hurt badly on the table saw, and there was no hope for him. It's not easy to find exact details, but it seems Jack got pulled onto the table while working, and the saw cut into him from his belly up through his middle. Some stories say it got worse when he had to drag himself off the table and across the floor to find help. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Johnny Cash mentioned a possible darker side to Jack's accident. In a 1995 interview, he suggested there might have been foul play or someone else involved. Cash said, "A neighbor went down to the shop with him that day and disappeared after the accident. I always thought of it as murder. Whether it was murder, a freak accident, or negligence, Jack Cash was severely injured and nearly cut in half. But what made it even harder was that he held on for 8 days before passing away. This gave the family a chance to say goodbye, but it was also really tough for everyone." Johnny Cash said Jack was in a coma for most of those 8 days. The family stayed at the hospital, keeping watch as Jack fought to live. But just before he died, Jack woke up and became clear-headed again. Cash remembered, "My dad came into the room I was in at 6:44 a.m., May 12, 1944, and I heard him praying and crying. He said, 'Let's go gather around the bed, he's dying.' We went in there. He'd come out of the coma, and he was so lucid, and he told every one of us goodbye. Then he closed his eyes and said, 'Mama, can you hear the singing? Do you see the angels?' She said, 'No, I can't.' He said, 'Oh, I do. How beautiful.' And then he died." Johnny Cash always felt like he saw heaven through his brother Jack's eyes. Jack's death weighed heavily on Johnny throughout his life. In the movie Walk the Line from 2005, they show Jack's death, although not everything is exactly like it happened. They switch around some parts for dramatic effect, but they do show Johnny fishing when Jack got hurt and his father finding him on the way home. In Walk the Line, Cash's father, Ray, appears to blame Johnny for Jack's accident. At the funeral, Ray looks disappointed at Johnny. In another scene, Ray picks up an empty can and shakes it, saying, "You hear that? That's nothing. That's what you are." Johnny's mom, Carrie, defends him, saying it wasn't his fault. Ray then says, "The devil did this. He took the wrong son." Whether Johnny's father was as tough on him as shown in the film, or if it was Johnny being hard on himself, is open to interpretation. But what's clear is that Jack's death changed Johnny a lot. He felt guilty for going fishing while Jack went to work, wishing he had been there to watch over him. Before Jack's death, Johnny Cash was often seen as a happy and carefree child, maybe even a bit careless. That's why his father thought he was not as good as Jack. But after Jack died, Johnny changed a lot. He became more serious, thoughtful, and determined. He turned into the man in black. Many of his songs were about tough choices, finding redemption, and the darker sides of life. Johnny Cash's career was filled with gospel music for a reason. He felt it was his duty to honor Jack's memory by including songs about faith and ministry in his albums. Johnny wanted to show that he was still carrying on Jack's legacy and prove that the devil didn't take the wrong son. The guilt Johnny felt over Jack's death led him to struggle with alcoholism and addiction, both privately and publicly. 10 years after Jack died in 1954, Johnny moved to Memphis, Tennessee, after serving in the Air Force. Memphis was close to Dyess, Arkansas, where Johnny grew up, and it was also home to Sun Records. By 1956, Johnny Cash had left his regular jobs in Memphis and was a star at Sun Records, singing rockabilly and country songs. On December 4, 1956, he joined Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Carl Perkins for the famous $1 Million Quartet. Hits like Cry, 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 Hey Porter, and I Walk the Line made Johnny Cash famous nationwide, but his wild behavior also added to his fame. By the late 1950s, Johnny Cash was addicted to pills like amphetamines and barbiturates, including trucker speed. Some of the wildest stories about Cash were fueled by drugs, like the time in 1965 when he accidentally started a huge fire in the Los Padres National Forest in California, burning 508 acres and scaring off endangered condors. Cash blamed it on sparks from his camper van, but his nephew, Damon Fielder, who was with him, said Cash started the fire to keep warm while he was high on drugs. In 1965, Johnny Cash had a couple of run-ins with the law, He was arrested in Starkville, Mississippi, for trespassing while picking flowers on private property, likely under the influence of drugs. Later that year, on October 4th, he was caught at the Mexican border with a large amount of amphetamine and tranquilizer pills in his guitar case. Despite these incidents, Cash only faced misdemeanor charges and managed to avoid serious jail time. But this wasn't the kind of legacy his brother Jack would have been proud of. Johnny Cash's final arrest happened in 1967 in Walker County, Georgia, during a car accident where he was found with a bag of pills. Sheriff Ralph Jones showed Cash mercy, but also gave him a stern lecture about wasting his talent. This incident prompted Cash to turn his life around. He credited it with helping him change for the better. Cash also held a benefit concert that drew 12,000 people and raised $75,000 for the local high school. Throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, Johnny Cash went in and out of rehab clinics and recovery hospitals. Sometimes he relapsed. Other times he needed help to avoid serious addiction after surgeries or injuries. During this time, Cash realized that one of the reasons for his addiction was the constant guilt he felt about his brother Jack's death. Johnny Cash always saw his brother Jack in his dreams, not as a young boy but as a grown man, always 2 years older than him. Cash said, "His beard is gray now, his hair is gray, he's always been there, he's aged with me." Johnny Cash also mentioned, "In Betty Ford, I went through a thing called grief therapy to dissolve and get rid of any unresolved grief I might have for anybody. And I went through that with Jack about 40 years past the fact." It could be a stretch to say that resolving his guilt and grief over Jack's death led Johnny Cash to get sober for good. It wasn't until 1992, when Cash checked himself into the Loma Linda Behavioral Medicine Center, that he had his final official rehab stay. Johnny Cash always carried the memory of Jack with him in everything he did. While many remember Cash's struggles, his legacy also includes his prison concerts, support for Native Americans, and his ministry work. Through these actions, Jack's legacy lived on through Johnny Cash's life. Johnny Cash's commitment to his faith went beyond just recording gospel music. In 1973, he co-wrote and narrated a film called Gospel Road, A Story of Jesus. He also wrote a Christian novel titled Man in White in 1986. Throughout his career, Cash participated in Christian outreach despite acknowledging his own flaws. He once humbly referred to himself as the biggest sinner of them all. Johnny Cash's life was a constant battle between his true self and the influence of his brother Jack, who always pushed him to do the right thing. This inner conflict made Cash a complex and intriguing character. It also showed in his music, where his pain and struggles resonated with many fans, offering comfort and healing. Subscribing to the channel would be a huge help in growing it. Thank you for watching. Please share your thoughts and your favorite Johnny Cash song. Until we meet next time, take care.